highest amount of concurrent players ever playing Terraria was 489,886 during the peak of the 1.4 update. Today, around 28,000 to 40,000 players play Terraria depending on the time of the day. At the time I am writing the script, its 24-hour peak of 40,527 put it 31st on the leaderboard. Then you realize another 33,000 people are also playing Team Mod Loader, so add that up. This website also shows price data, and it's interesting how cheap Terraria sometimes can get. Nowadays, the sales are almost around 50%. Apparently, the cheapest copy of Terraria is in Argentina at 130 Argentine pesos, or around $1 US. This is almost certainly due to some kind of hyperinflation. Pink gel is uniquely non-flammable, until it isn't. You cannot use pink gel as ammunition for your flamethrower or elf melter, but it's perfectly a-okay to use in a Molotov cocktail. Considering dynamite and the bomb's cost and radius, the dynamite destroys around 7.5 tiles per silver spent, while the bombs destroy around 26 tiles per silver spent. Efficient. Vampire miners from old-gen console don't wear a mining helmet, but they can still go off light. The Drax used to be findable in shadow chests in the mobile version, even in pre-hard mode, which is completely broken. Aside from pink gel, gel always shows the color of the first slime killed to enter its stack. This would make our gel show a variety of colors, but it always resets to blue upon world reload, hence why it is basically only shown in the blue color. Every unlaunched flail in Terraria has 8 or technically 9 spikes poking out of its sprite. The only exception, of course, is the flower Pow. The Tao of Pow rhymes in English, but it doesn't when it's pronounced natively as dull, at least in Mandarin. Interestingly, in the Chinese version of Terraria, the name is Tai Ji Lian Jia, or Tai Chi Flail. Gel is only shown on the bottom side of a sticky dirt bomb, but all of it can stick. Storm divers are internally called Vortex Riflemen, and their banner was actually originally called this. This is also true for Brain Sucklers and Vortexians. Hollowed Armor is the only vanilla set to have a head variation for Summoner. This is common in mods like Calamity, but was added to Hollowed Armor 1.4. I guess it makes sense since the Hollowed and Hard Mode Ore armors are the only true all-class armors in Terraria. The console-exclusive Titan, Dragon, and Spectral armors used to be resprites of Gold, Jungle, and Mithril Hood and Robe. It's pretty obvious, but this was rectified when 1.2 was brought to console. Skeletron's teeth have a gap, but its prime sibling doesn't. Both the Creeper and the True Eye of Cthulhu's have a glint in the top left corner of their eyes. All the wood armors have texture in their helmets, but the palm wood helmet seems to be unusually smooth, kinda like a coconut. Different trees have different chances for shaking. For example, a 2.4302 chance for a rotten egg in a forest tree, but 2.8543 in a corrupt or crimson tree. Why these extremely precise numbers? I have no clue. Only 400 dropped item entities can be present in the world at a time. Any dropped items over this number won't spawn and will get deleted. Despite being obtained pretty easily in hard mode, the Holy Hand Grenade has a rarity of Lime, a rarity reserved for around the Plantera stage. Of course, it's not the only weird thing about the Holy Hand Grenade. The large gems generally look extremely similar to their smaller counterparts, down to the cuts in the gems, aside from the grand orb of Amber. In the last video, a lot of people mentioned that I missed the axe, the guitar, and Terraria. I thought I couldn't play notes, but it's actually pretty interesting that they added the ability for it to do so in 1.4. Before 1.4, it was completely random what note it played. Neat, huh? The harp can only be played in whole tones, so it cannot play F, which is a semitone from E. The Phase Blade and Phase Saber used to have the same sprite, but this was rectified in 1.3.2 to include a little light on the bottom. The Pearl Sandstone block has a weirdly long triple-barreled name, as it just applies a standard prefix. Vicious Powder used to actually have 2 knots on it versus 1 on the others. This was rectified in 1.3.1. Badger's hat drops from the Wall of Flesh, but only if you kill it on the same day as the Eye of Cthulhu, so within 24 minutes. Lesser healing potions can appear in placed form, but you yourself can't place them down. Every bookshelf has its unique taste, but the Dynasty one's gotta be the most jarring. You can't even see any books in that. The little 1-block holes into sword shrines seems to implicate that the enchanted swords fell out of the sky into the ground or something. Mana crystals used to cost 10 Fallen Stars in 1.1, then 5 in 1.2, then 3 in 1.3, but got re-nerfed to 5 in 1.4. Ebon, or Ebon, as a prefix means black, so Ebonstone literally means black stone. It's where ebony gets its name, a name for a dark wood. In fact, that's how it's translated in Terraria. The Kraken has the largest projectile size of any yo-yo at 19 pixels across. That's 18% larger than the smallest at 16 pixels. The Hot Reels achievement has a hook attached to string submerged in lava. This is despite all hooks being attached to some kind of bobber in Terraria. Most treasure bags drop some amount of money, like 15 gold for Plantera, but the Duke Fishron bag only drops 20 silver. The text on the Chinese lantern reads Kai or open. That's a pretty weird thing to put on a lantern, but I guess they tried to put a word on it, given how many pixels they had to work with. All the in-a-bottle lanterns cannot be toggled off with wire, as their sources light are not within your control. The spider brain only has 4 legs, even though arachnids have 8 legs. Still looks creepy though. In update 1.2.3, the Dungeon Guardian gained 999 defense from 9000 to 9999. This was the same update that fixed the turtle armor exploit. The lunatic cultist appears to be wearing a mantle, cloak, and hood over its entire body. Since the Dungeon Guardian can only take 1 damage, with a base 4% critical chance, it takes 9,614 hits on average to defeat it. At 50%, this would take 6666 hits, and at the maximum of 100%, it would take just 5,000 hits to defeat the Dungeon Guardian. The obsidian swordfish's protrusion is serrated, unlike the smooth pike found on a regular swordfish. The palladium pike looks just like a halberd, a type of medieval European spear. Meanwhile, the orichalcum halberd looks just like a pike. Tim is one of the oldest added enemies in Terraria, with it being added all the way back in 1.0.3. According to the bestiary entry for the rainbow slime must maintain a constant fluid intake, for some reason. Crimson blocks like crimsand, crimsandstone, and crimstone all use the crim prefix, but shadewood doesn't. This is unlike the corruption, which does maintain perfect consistency. All toilets share the same basic construction except the living wood and bamboo ones, which look more like a latrine. Some bookcases have a sprite in them resembling the water bolt. Trees planted in the desert like palm trees, pearlwood, shadewood, and ebonwood all grow on this lump thing versus in the dirt like a regular sapling. The demolitionist seems to carry a lantern around even though he already seems to have a mining helmet on. Turker the Ungrateful's boss icon is shown as this skull thing, as it is the Terraria 3DS boss icon, which is the only version still having Turker in it. Since the 3DS version may never be updated, that old version will probably serve forever as a relic of the past. And the last and technically bonus fact, Terraria ticks at 60 Hz or 60 times per second. This is the same as the core frame rate of the game, which is also 60 frames per second. And you can see the game slow down like this if you turn frame skip to off and cap the frame rate. This rate is 3 times faster than Minecraft's internal tick rate, which is capped at a maximum of 20 ticks per second. And that's it, good job. I recommend a subscription for more and to check out the rest of the 6 episodes and counting. If not, well, this is the end.